Starting a nonprofit can be a very rewarding but very challenging process, and the unfortunate truth is that not all nonprofits make it. Data from the National Center on Charitable Statistics estimates that about 30% of nonprofits will close their doors within 10 years. Furthermore, a report from GuideStar and its partners showed that 50% of nonprofits had about a month or less of operating cash on hand at any given time, bringing them dangerously close to insolvency year to year. And all of this was exacerbated further during COVID-19 and its economic impacts as resources for nonprofits dwindled, but the need for nonprofit services increased. I know I'm kind of painting a bleak picture here, but I do want to say that there are lots of things that you can do with careful and strategic planning to ensure that your organization is strong and resilient and able to survive and last a long time in order to achieve its mission. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the top reasons that a nonprofit might fail and what you can do to prevent your organization from meeting this demise. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I'm a nonprofit founder, executive director, and YouTuber sharing all my tips and strategies for starting a nonprofit, creating a social impact, and more. If you're looking for some guidance or resources, don't hesitate to check out my website, foundertofulltime.com. As always, I hope that this video helps you out. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and ring the bell for alerts for when I post another video. Okay, so let's get into it. Here are 6 reasons that nonprofits fail and a couple of tips on what you can do to prevent your organization from flopping in these particular ways. Reason number 1 is no strategic plan, also known as no clear vision and no well-defined goals. Remember, nonprofits are formed in order to meet a community need or solve a particular community or national or global problem. And so without a clear vision and a strategic plan outlining your steps to get to that vision, your organization is not going to know whether it's making progress towards its goals, and it's going to have a lot of confused people on your team who also aren't sure what they're doing at any given day to work towards your ultimate end mission. So the first thing that you need to do in order to address this possible pitfall for your organization is to make sure that your vision statement is clear. If you're not sure if your vision statement is clear, that's probably a good indication, but another thing you can do is ask other people, read your vision statement to them, have them think about what it means and articulate back to you what they think it means. If they are getting it right, matching what's in your head, and consistently each person you ask is giving you a similar or the same answer, then great, your vision statement might be clear. If not, that could be a sign that you need to do some work to clarify your vision statement. And as a refresher, a vision statement is when you picture the world or the community that your nonprofit has helped create in the future, and you're able to explain what it looks like then. It's a world without hunger, or a world in which no child has to sleep without a roof over their head in your city. It's basically your end goal as a nonprofit, why you got started in the first place, to achieve a particular goal or a mission. Another thing you need to do to make sure that your vision is clear and that you have a strategic direction and plan to guide your team and know when you're making measurable progress is to set goals, specifically SMART goals. That's specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely. Here's an example of a SMART goal for your organization. Our organization will help 25 people experiencing homelessness find permanent homes in the next 2 years. It's specific, it's clear, and it's got a timetable on it. You're going to do it within 2 years. And then the third thing that you need to do to mitigate this particular problem for your organization is to write a strategic plan, a formal strategic plan. Think of a strategic plan as a formal document on which you list your organization's top SMART goals for the next year or couple of years. You're going to share your ultimate goals. You're going to share the actions that your organization plans to take in order to reach those goals. You're going to put deadlines on each goal, and you're going to determine who on your team is going to be responsible for owning each goal. Side note, getting your team together to write a strategic plan is a great team building exercise that makes sure everyone knows your vision for the organization and is on the same page. The second pitfall an organization might face that could lead to its untimely failure is not understanding your true costs as an organization. The nonprofit world as a whole is pretty bad about accurately explaining its true costs to the public, meaning what it really costs to effectively run a nonprofit and meet its public serving mission. And as a result, there's widespread confusion and misconceptions about what it really costs to run a nonprofit effectively. I've talked about this in past videos. Google the overhead myth if you're curious about that. The consequences of a nonprofit not really understanding its true costs and not budgeting for those true costs and not communicating those true costs to its audience are many. In this case, the true costs are the costs of not just the specific items or services needed to execute a particular project or program for your nonprofit, but all of the costs related to the infrastructure of your organization, from staff to you got to do bookkeeping or else you might be in some financial trouble, all of these things that are required in order to run an organization like a business so that it can fulfill its program's goals. I've said this before, but you can't serve the community if you can't even keep your lights on. So if a nonprofit doesn't assess and budget for its true costs, it's not going to be able to raise enough money to cover its real costs, and it's going to be very weak if an emergency happens because it will not have spent the time and resources to build up the infrastructure that it takes to have a strong, sustainable organization. What to do to mitigate this particular risk for a nonprofit is pretty simple. Assess your true costs. Write down all the costs involved directly or indirectly in running your organization. From the space you might have to rent in order to house the materials that you use to implement your programs, to feed people, to house people, to help people in your community. Account for all of your staffing needs, account for your bookkeeping services, the software you use, your website. All of these things are not unrelated overhead. They are a core need that your organization has in order to achieve everything else that it does. Okay, end rant. Next one. Thing number 3 that can lead to a nonprofit's failure is, speaking of infrastructure, not building up infrastructure and processes to run your organization smoothly. Knowing your organization's true costs is a great first step, but knowing is half the battle, as they say. Then you have to actually take the time and invest the energy into building up the processes and the infrastructure you need to make your organization strong. Think things like sound financial and bookkeeping processes or human resources policies to protect your staff and reduce the risk of turnover. Or thinking back to the strategic plan point, the software and the processes in place to collect data and feedback from the community to know if you're reaching your goals in your programs as an organization. How bad would it be to go on executing your program for years, not really being able to collect any data, and not knowing if your program is having the impact that you really want it to have, and then 1 year finding out that it wasn't this whole time? I would have rather had the data from the beginning. There are other consequences to not having some of this infrastructure and these processes in place too. On the financial side, if you don't have sound financial practices in place and you get a surprise audit from the IRS, which is totally a thing that can happen if you're a nonprofit, you're not going to be in a good position to pass that audit, and there could be some dire consequences. Additionally, these processes can help you make sure that your staff knows how to operate in the organization, which can prevent turnover and team confusion, all which are a hindrance to accomplishing your organization's charitable mission. So what you do about it is pretty simple. You've got to put these things in place. I would start by creating a checklist of all of the policies, procedures, and infrastructure you already have, and then taking a look at what's missing on the list. Then get to work with your board and your team and create those policies in a way that makes everyone happy and gets them on the same page. Thing number 4 that can increase a nonprofit's odds of flopping is having no fundraising plan. In one of my first videos on YouTube, I talk about this as a mistake that I personally made. So I have seen the impacts not having a fundraising plan had on my organization, and I see it in other organizations too. Many organizations have not figured out what their particular revenue generating style is going to be. There's no one size fits all for every nonprofit. I know that getting donations and grants are commonly known ways to raise money for organizations, but there are tons of ways. And knowing all of the options and which ones are going to be the best fit for your organization is really important to do as early as possible in your organization's life cycle. So what you've got to do is study all your options and think about which are going to align best with your mission, the way you operate, the capacity and skill sets of your team. Identify all the potential revenue generating opportunities for your organization, and then build out a plan for each one. You want to work on growing your audience, executing on your fundraising goals and your plan, and then retaining your supporters by thanking them and acknowledging them along the way. The fifth reason that a nonprofit might eventually come to fail is that it hasn't spent enough time building up relationships. Success at most things in life or business involves having positive relationships with other people, and nonprofits are no exception. And when I mean having a real relationship, I'm talking about a relationship with other people or organizations or businesses such that there's trust there. You could call upon them for a favor and they could call upon you for a favor. There's a real relationship like you would have with a friend. Many organizations instead focus on transactions instead of real relationships. What they can get from donors, what they can get from volunteers. But donors and volunteers and supporters are people too, and they need relationships. So you've got to work on building that trust and deepening your relationship with these folks over time, or else they might not be around when an emergency hits and you need their help. When you're a small organization and it constantly feels like you're putting out fires, I get it. This can be really hard because relationships take time and investment, but you've got to make time for it. So what you do is you build in time to your schedule and your board's schedule and your team's schedule to go out and spend time with people, show up to things, be visible, talk to people, ask them what their needs are, ask them what's going on in their organizations, and build these relationships over time. And if you want to establish some new relationships, identify who you'd like to have a relationship with and reach out to them. See if they are willing to meet or chat. Don't ask them for anything right away, but just ask them about what they are doing out in the community and how you can be a part of supporting them, just like they can be a part of supporting your cause too. And the sixth and final thing that I'm going to talk about in this video that can lead to a nonprofit's failure is no succession or transition plan. A succession or a transition plan is a written plan for your organization that tells the leaders the steps that they're going to need to take when a key leader or key member of the team leaves, either through a planned exit or a sudden or emergency exit. If an organization has been driven forward by one person or a small handful of people for a long time, what happens when that person leaves or those people leave, or heaven forbid something happens to those people and they aren't able to continue their duties? The organization could fall apart. So you have to have a plan for what you're going to do if that happens. So what you need to do here is create your succession plan. You need to write out in this plan what you're going to do if someone leaves suddenly or through a planned exit, who you're going to communicate with about the departure and how, and more. I'd love to hear from you now. Are you working on starting a nonprofit, and what have been some of your biggest challenges or successes? Share in the comments below. And as I mentioned, if you need some help figuring out the steps or getting some training on how to start a nonprofit, definitely check out my website, foundertofulltime.com. Also, you might want to consider subscribing to my newsletter for nonprofit leaders and change makers, because I send out lots of resources and opportunities, including some funding opportunities that I come across to nonprofit folks and change makers regularly. Check out the links for those in the description as well. Last thing, don't forget to check out my Facebook group if you are on Facebook. It's called Change the World or Bust. We have lots and lots of people in there from all over the world who just want to make a difference and are navigating the various ways to do that, whether it's through starting a nonprofit, some kind of social impact project, and more. But come on and join us if you have a desire to make an impact in your community as well and would like to be around others who do too. I hope this video is helpful. Thank you again so much for watching. I'm so grateful to you. Hope to see you next time. Bye.